welcome to Inside the Middle East. I'm Hala Garani in Beirut today. Well, if there's one thing Lebanon is known for, it's that over the last few years it's gone through some major crises, a war and political turmoil, and it seems like all the factions here can very rarely agree on anything. But if there's one thing they can agree on, it's what their national symbol is. And you see it on practically every single souvenir, memento, and flag. And that is, you see it here, the cedar tree. Our Brent Sadler traveled across the country and explains to us why the cedar tree is such a potent symbol.
It is the enduring emblem of a turbulent, often violent, Middle East nation. The design of a cedar tree, set in red and white on the flag of Lebanon. A perennial tree that promotes banks, pushes business, flies the national airline, and sells a popular brew of beer. But the cedar is much more than a mere brand name. Behind it lies an epic story of resilience dating back to biblical times when dense forests covered this land.
They're mentioned 83 times in the Holy Bible, and specifically the Cedars of Lebanon. And the Bible is one of the very important manuscripts that describe the ancient forests, describe the cedar trees as they were at the time. Majestic, complete.
Mirna Seman has studied them in precise detail and knows these trees, descendants of once mighty forests, like the back of her hand.
I'm very much attached to them. I know almost each and every one of them. I know all the paths in the forest, and they're part of my life.
A part of her life that is still being whittled away in some areas of Lebanon, where protected cedars still fall victim to illegal logging by some Lebanese who display reckless disregard for their environment. Forests damaged by illegal tracks and primitive construction. So why are these living treasures of natural beauty such a potent symbol of national identity in Lebanon's fractured political state? Well, in the eyes of many, they do hold mystical relevance because they are iconic survivors through centuries of man-made plunder and waste.
There it is. This is one of the stumps that I used to tell the age of the cedar trees in the Lebanese forest. So I have actually counted this one, and this one is 750 years old. And we can count, as you can see, it's very simple, quite easy. We can follow well with a magnifier. It's easily, it can be easily studied, and each of these rings is 1 year old.
A small souvenir trade in cedar still survives today, but rampant exploitation of both the valuable cedar wood and its equally valuable resin began to decimate the forests thousands of years ago. Modern civilization devoured most of them.
60% of what remained of the cedar forest, of the forests of Lebanon, were logged during World War I to support the Damascus-Hijaz railway, to fuel the trains themselves.
A walled grove of ancient trees have made their last stand in a now rocky landscape, once carpeted in luscious green. In this tiny forest, called the Cedars of God, you can both admire and take a whiff of the legendary trees at the same time. And the aroma, is that coming from the felled tree here or from the bark here?
No, it's coming from the bark, because underneath this wood...
You can actually smell it, can't you?
Yes, you can. And it's a wonderful smell.
It really is, quite extraordinary. Never smelt a tree before, it really is. Quite exceptional and very, very pleasant, isn't it?
It is. This is the quality of the cedar resin, and that's why it was extracted by royalties in ancient civilizations to be used for their ceremonies and to be used for their religious tributes.
Now there's another potential killer. climate change. Lebanese scientists blame global warming for an infestation by the sawfly of tangerine that ravaged this forest in the late 1990s, one of 10 reserves in the country. Experts found that high concentrations of sawfly larvae were nestled in soil around the trees. Larvae that gobbled their way through the forest, turning verdant green branches into lifeless brown. A battle to save the forest was eventually won, but the cedar is always under threat in one form or another. An hour's drive from Beirut is where we find Nora Jumblat, another serious environmentalist.
We are going to go through all three forests. It's very beautiful. It's 550 square kilometers, meaning 5% of all Lebanese territory. 2 million trees.
Her husband, Druze chief Walid Jumblat, led his own militia force during Lebanon's civil war when he fought enemies, but tried, he says, in the 1980s to save the forests using a deadly form of extreme nature conservation.
So I fixed up some mines on the roads leading to the cedar forests, which prevented people to go for the time being. Then later on we fixed up the Cedar Reserve Society,
of which Jumblat serves as president. By far the greatest numbers of cedars in Lebanon grow at high altitude, 12 to 1800 meters, or 4 to some 6,000 feet in the Shuf Cedar Nature Reserve.
This area was already protected.
Here you can breathe the rarefied air of the cedar's natural habitat.
So, tell me a little bit about the height.
Well, this is the nature of the tree. That's where it lives. It just needs the kind of soil and the kind of weather up here.
So it's high up here. We're slightly out of breath.
Absolutely.
But this is where they live. This is their home.
This is their home. And they're just absolutely magnificent trees, as you can see.
Trees which have notched up thousands of years in age, bearing silent witness to human history.
They know the Mesopotamians, and they know the pharaohs, and they know the Phoenicians. It's a lot of history in a living being existing today on this planet. This is something we should cherish. It is beyond science. It has to come from the heart.
The cedar, a wonder of nature that survives over adversity, like the country it stands for. Brent Sadler, inside the Middle East, in the cedar forests of Lebanon.
Well, from the mountains of Lebanon, we take you to the mountains of Iraq. That's after a short break. You're with Inside the Middle East.